Hey everyone, welcome to the Gravity Doctors. This episode is going to be a little bit different from some of our others. But before we get started, let's do some quick intros again. I'm Dr. Brennan Spiegel. I'm a professor of medicine and public health here in Los Angeles in the Northern Hemisphere, which we'll see is relevant in a second. And with me is Dr. Lachlan Kent in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a cognitive scientist and I'm interested in mental gravities, how body and mind are working together. So I'm down in Melbourne in the Southern Hemisphere where it is summer, but it's not summery. We've just had our hot Christmas that didn't come. It wasn't hot at all.
Yeah, well, here it's raining in LA, and the reason we're focusing on our hemispheres is there are different seasons right now. Right now, we are well into the winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and down south, you guys are experiencing the summer. So this podcast is all about gravity and the physics of our world and how it affects our mind and our body. And today's episode is going to be focused on the seasons. And right now, the difference between winter and summer is something we're both experiencing in our different hemispheres. And how does that affect our dating lives? How does that affect our interest in so-called falling in love, a term that has a gravitational overtone, falling? And here in the United States, at least, this time of year is called cuffing season. That's what the young people call it anyway. And this is the time when many people feel an urge, if they're not already in a long-term relationship, to pair up with somebody for the winter. It's called, like you're being handcuffed to somebody. That's what the young people call it. So what is it about this time of year that would lead people to want to pair up? And what in the world could that have to do with gravity? So let's talk a little bit about that, Lachlan. I know you've given a lot of thought about the seasons and about the relationship between the seasons and this force of gravity. What do you think might be leading to people wanting to pair up in the winter months?
Well, obviously, I think about mood as one of the main entry points for mental gravity. So depression is this down mental state and joy is an up mental state where there's not just upness, but there's sort of balance. You want to be up. Where down is you're not down because you want to be, you're down because you're being held down or oppressed. And winter is something that is beyond our control. And a lot of people experience seasonal affective disorder. So they experience a kind of depression in winter. So there is like a seasonality to mood. So there's kind of that association that brings, okay, summer is when you go out and it's a joyous time of year. And with dating in America, what I associate that with is, or with love or personal connection, is kind of spring break. That's the kind of thing that I've heard of. I've never heard of cuffing season before. This is a brand new term for me. But when you're going out is sort of that spring release, yeah? You spring out into the world. It's like a coming of age thing as well for college students. And that's about sort of cutting loose, isn't it? That's the opposite of being cuffed is I have nothing's holding me back. So there's a kind of seasonality in our human interaction, not just our mood, but how we connect with people. And that's with cuffing season. Obviously, we're going indoors. We're not going out as much. So there's more opportunity to, connect with one person one-on-one.
Yeah, so in the winter, the days become shorter. There's less sunlight. And we know that sunlight is vital for many forms of wellness. One thing that sun exposure does is it boosts serotonin levels in your body. And seasonal affective disorder, or SAD or SAD, which is especially prevalent in the far northern hemispheres and the Scandinavian countries where they will use UV lamps in the winter just to maintain some UV light exposure, is in part related to low serotonin levels.
Right.
And we've talked about serotonin on this podcast before, about how it's sort of a gravity management molecule. When you have a lot of serotonin coursing through your body, you feel mentally elevated, kind of high in a way, high on life, and physically elevated because all those pumps and tubes in your body are contracting and keeping you upright. Your muscles are strong. And in the winter, some of that kind of wanes. So physically, there could be this diminishment feeling literally down
Mm.
in the winter, in part because of the diminished sun exposure.
Absolutely. And we think of, the seasons themselves are determined by the Earth's gravitational orbit. So we're actually, we're living Earth's gravity, not in the downward pull, but in the cyclical
Hmm.
aspect of gravity, the sort of the sun's pull. Like we're almost going another scale out, cosmologically. I mean, we don't talk about mental gravity or biogravitational medicine in cosmological terms. We try and make sure that we're staying, grounded in the science and the physics and not getting too woo. But I think, there is obviously, we're doing something here that is planetary and that is orbital. We are cycling through these seasons. And Brennan, we've talked a lot about sort of breath and posture,
Hmm.
serotonin being boosted by, deep and regular breathing. And that's just we can call that another gravitational cycle where you breathe in and up and then out and down. So there's like gravitational cycles kind of at all scales that we're mirroring even in our human connection. I think that's the part of cuffing season. This is a cycle that is, in sync with the seasons.
Yeah. So if this is the season where you tend to feel a little bit more down or reserved, or maybe literally pulled to
Yeah.
the ground in a way, spending less time out and about, more time inside,
Low energy.
to
Yeah.
having less energy, it makes sense to sort of compensate for that by finding these forms of stabilization,
Mm,
forms of even uprightness, and, finding a partner when it's healthy can be an incredibly invigorating experience,
mm.
and a positive experience and a literally uplifting experience. So it may, in fact, be that cuffing season, as we call it here, is aligned with these months in part because we're trying to find ways to counterbalance the downward pull
Yeah.
that we naturally feel this time of year, at least in the northern hemisphere.
And it's kind of leaning into the gravity of it, isn't it? Sort of going deep with someone, where if spring break is sort of lots of shallow interactions, let's call them. If we're going one-on-one for a few months, we're finding out more about the person. We're getting deeper down to their core sense of self. Who are they? Are they a good match for us in the long term? Do our values align? I think there's alignment between people as well. Another gravitational sort of metaphor. Are we
Hmm.
finding that our values match? I think this is a great way of thinking about human connection in gravitational terms to show the depth of mental gravity is not just about mood. It's not this instantaneous thing. It is something that we cultivate over a lifetime. They can be lifelong bonds. We talk about, the power of attraction. We don't really talk about that, Brennan, in gravitational terms. It's not a universal law of attraction. That's too woo and cosmological for us, I
Yeah.
think. But to think about that there is a gravitational core or gravitational meaning behind long, deep, you know, strong human connection. I think that's really interesting.
And there is a physical component to this too, right? We do tend to be attracted to people who are, let's call it upright, stronger, um, you know, kind of standing up to the world
Mhm,
physically,
mhm.
emotionally, uh, you know, uh, exerting oneself
Yeah,
against this force of gravity that tends to pull us down this time of year more than other times,
yeah,
perhaps. It makes sense, almost like peacocks,
yeah.
fl- you know,
But
s- yeah,
but is that more spring break? Is that more the opposite? Is that more I'm peacocking, I'm throwing my chest out, hair back in spring, whereas cuffing
probably. I
in
think
autumn
that
and
it's
winter
a
is
universal
yeah,
idea year round, right?
yeah,
But it is interesting nonetheless that, uprightness seems to be attractive.
yeah. And maybe depth as well. Like musicians, might
Mm,
be physically not as strong as the jocks, or the nerds might not be as strong as the jocks, but they've got emotional and intellectual depth. There's something that you want to see
yeah.
over those winter months as you get to know someone. It's not just about, can they puff up their chest like a bird, like a peacock, but can they show that sort of nuance and, the intellectual side, Brennan, like us.
Yeah, yeah, that's the way to feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never exactly the jock, but I wouldn't call us dating experts since we're both been
No,
partners and
not at
kids and
all.
all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in any event, one thing that is worth thinking about this time of year is what kind of activities are worth doing
Yeah.
that can help once again sort of counteract that downward tug. And again, I'm referring to all of my brethren in the northern hemisphere. You guys are
Mhm.
already well into summer in your
Mhm.
part of the world. But, if you are coupling up, maybe it makes sense to do things this time of year that force you to go outside and, walk up a hill, do stargazing and
Yeah.
look up out into the cosmos
Yep.
when you're maybe feeling contracted and feeling more down, naturally down. It makes sense to kind of look out and up this time of year to sort of counteract that. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think about it in terms of, let's talk about fall, the autumn months. Let's talk about fall as this, okay, we're going back to replenish. I think it's not about, intense exercise. It's not about, you know, uh, building muscle. We talk about getting your summer bod ready in spring. So that's when you pump weights and you get yourself trim and taut to go out. You actually want to be, relaxing and replenishing over winter. So I'm developing, this is a bit of a sneak preview, a mental gravity app
Mm,
that does go through, there's, a lot of it is about breath work, that cycle of breath, but it is tying those breath movements in and up, out and down
mm,
to the seasons themselves. So the down season, the down part is that exhale of the I'm letting everything go, and but you don't want to go to the point where you let everything go too much. You don't want to lose form and lose shape. You want to make sure that you stay, sort of coherent and whole for the winter months where you might need to sort of hibernate and stay, sort of build energy up towards the following spring. So it's not
hmm
about intense exercise. It's about things that are maybe better suited to dating, which is, going for a walk, lower and, yoga, those sort of things you can do as couples. I've done that with my partner a lot. There's something, I wouldn't say sexual about yoga, but there's something very intimate about it. It's
mm,
physical, but it's low intensity. Yeah.
yeah. And having been practicing yoga lately, which is new for me.
Yeah.
In fact, Harmon Clark is my new yoga instructor. So, those of you that are listening, if you haven't heard the episode with Harmon
Yeah.
that we put out a little bit ago, it's such a good one. But he's my yoga instructor now, and I'm
Mm.
getting better aligned literally with my body and feeling the strength that comes from holding a position that I normally wouldn't even think to hold. And it does feel like this time of year that's such a good exercise because it may be harder in certain parts of the world, especially to get out and run. Right
Yeah.
now, New York is receiving more snow than it has in something like 5 years. So it may be a little hard to go out and run in Central Park right now, but to be indoors and being able to exert yourself and really fighting the force of gravity, but aligning with it, not even fighting it, but harmonizing with it this
Exactly.
time of year, especially when it's hard to go out and hard to do those exercises and activities you might normally do in the summer that you guys are able to do this time of year.
Yep.
Yoga may have a particularly special purpose in the winter, in the fall and winter.
And it's all about body balance, isn't it? It's about, making sure that you're symmetrical left and right. It's about, repeating exercises on one side and then making sure they're mirrored on the other to maintain body balance, to make sure that your posture is actually properly aligned. So I started yoga 10, 15 years ago because I had a bad back and I tended to lean to
Mm,
one side. And since doing yoga, I've corrected that posture by strengthening the left side that I had
mm,
neglected for 30 years. So it is about maintaining balance and posture, but in this low intensity, a lot of deep breathing, a lot of strong, we
mm,
talk about interstitial sort of tensegrity. So that when
hmm
you're breathing against the posture, you're breathing into the boundary. You're making sure you're tightening and um, sort of shaping that boundary between yourself and the outer world. It's a deep experience. It's not going for a run. It's not going for playing sport or dancing. It's very it's kind of insular. You're within your own um, body and mind, or doing it with a partner like Harmon Clark. That's an amazing teacher to have. So there is a connection part of it as well.
Yeah. So we've talked about a few practical things this time of year. that we can do. At least, again, I keep saying this time of year in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
Want to
Yeah.
be equal opportunist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for those of us that are experiencing winter, we've talked about yoga as a really great anti-gravity indoor
Mm.
activity, particularly some of those inverted positions like the child's pose and
Yeah.
down dog and that sort of thing, shoulder stand if you can do that sort of thing.
Mhm.
We talked a bit about maximizing your UV light exposure to the degree that you can. Some people use the UV light boxes, in fact, particularly in far northern hemispheres.
Mhm.
Maybe there's some other ways to boost your serotonin. We've talked about diet in the past, certain foods that can really boost serotonin production that have a lot of tryptophan in them.
Mm.
We've talked about turkey and avocado and chicken and chickpeas and kidney beans and certain nuts and eggs and tofu. Filling up with those kinds of foods this time of year may just help
Mm.
take the edge off that downward drag that we
Yep.
tend to feel.
Yep.
What else do you recommend our listeners try out this time of year if they're feeling a little down?
Well, if we're talking about cuffing, we're talking about cuddling a lot, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Like getting close and intimate with someone
Mm,
releases oxytocin.
yes.
And I know we talk a lot about serotonin, but it's not like serotonin, acts in a void. There are, positive feedback loops between happy chemicals, and oxytocin is one. Brennan, can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit more about the connection between oxytocin and serotonin, how they
Yeah.
dynamically interplay and reinforce each other?
Right, right. So, one thing oxytocin is known to do is to prime the vagus nerve. Now, I'm
Right.
not an oxytocin expert, but there's some evidence that it can help boost vagus nerve function
Hmm.
and also affect heart rate variability or HRV, which is the beat to beat variations as your heart is pumping away. And the vagus nerve we've talked about before is kind of like an internal spigot to
Yeah.
release serotonin, but it has many different factors that determine its sensitivity, and oxytocin is one of those. So if you are cuddling up in the winter, it sort of does have some anti-gravity effects through the vagus nerve, through oxytocin, and through eventually serotonin.
Yeah, and we're talking about, sympathetic nervous system balance as well. So vagus nerve primes the parasympathetic nervous system, which is sort of rest and digest. And we're talking about, maybe cuddling up on the couch, with a tub of ice cream or something, watching Netflix. I think that's what the young people would endorse as the seasonal activity. Then, okay, we're releasing oxytocin, cuddling, we get a set of serotonin hit, but we also feel relaxed through parasympathetic tone at that point. So you're actually in tune with the season internally. I think that's what we're saying, that there are reasons why there are seasons for dating, there are seasons for parties, there are seasons for hibernating, and they have physiological effects that make sense in terms of gravity.
And it all kind of comes together when you just think about, once again, the whole idea of this podcast of biogravitational medicine is that we are a consequence of our world.
Mm.
We are a result of the physics of our planet,
Yep.
the spin of the earth, our relationship to the moon and the sun and all the big objects around us pulling on us, affecting us through UV light, through the pull of the earth itself and the moon and so on. And we'll probably have to talk about this in a few future episodes where we think about lots of other ways that these big celestial bodies and our relationships to them affect our health,
Yeah.
our literal physical health, our mental and cognitive health. And really, this is just a really simple example that to me brings it all together.
Yeah, we live in tune with nature. There's nothing woo or mystical about it. It's just we live in sync because we sprang from the earth. When we die, we return to it. We are natural animals. And it's not surprising that even our animal instincts are in tune with gravitational cycles. That's not surprising. We're not revealing anything new here. We're just trying to look at it through that lens, because it's not often that we talk about love in terms of gravity, except as this universal law of attraction, which I actually find a little bit, uncomfortable to think about it that way. But,
But
there's something, there's something real
we
here.
talked about this at the beginning.
Yeah.
You fall in love,
Well, you
right?
fall in love. Yeah.
We fall asleep.
Yeah.
We fall in love. And we've talked before about how sometimes you get those butterfly feelings in your belly when you're falling in love, the excitement, and it's the
Mm.
same feelings you get when you're falling on a roller coaster, physically falling down. It's
Yeah.
all related. And, this time of year, if you want to try to counteract some of those downward feelings, find a partner. If you have a partner, cuddle up with them, boost that
Settle
oxytocin,
and settle
settle down,
down.
settle
Settle down.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think we've covered this topic pretty well
Yeah.
because we'll fall into a rabbit hole. I think if we go
Yeah.
too much farther, because I don't have a whole much else to say. What did we miss here,
I don't
Lachlan?
think we missed anything. I think we've covered all the bases there. We'll have to do a summer episode soon for our Southern Hemisphere people.
Well, for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere like Lachlan, we'll be sure to do that and enjoy your upward activities or
Upward and
outside
outward.
running and jogging, whatever you guys do down there in
Yeah.
Australia this time of year.
Get in the surf, get in the water.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, until next time, this is the Gravity Doctors, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
If you like that episode, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about the Gravity Doctors. You can also follow us on social media. Check out the book Pull, and you can also check out our show notes for tips and links to some of our scientific articles. You can follow us online at thegravitydoctors.com. You can follow me, BrennanSpiegelMD.com, and Dr. Lachlan at lachlankent.au.